You know, I've said in recent conversations with family and friends that in all the years that I've been living here in Washington, which goes back to the mid-1970s, there have been incredible things that have unfolded here in Washington, and some of the inaugurations have been historic and they've been extraordinary, and there are other kinds of events that have been incredibly memorable. I don't know anything that has galvanized this city quite like the visit of this Pope. Mm-hmm. And it's been really extraordinary to see. I think it's a reflection of both the authenticity of the individual, the sheer quality of his character, and what he personally embodies. In our tradition, we kind of call this a sacramental quality. He is an embodiment of a set of values that has such a profound resonance with our university. And you can see in our efforts to try to live out the integrity of our commitment to the values that have animated this place for 226 years. Well, there's a lot that resonates with his own personal history as a Jesuit. So it's been a pretty special time. I had the privilege yesterday to attend the welcoming at the White House, and then to go to the Mass at the shrine. And so it was very special for me and for my family to be able to have that opportunity. Yeah. Today I had a chance to listen and read his remarks before the joint session of Congress. And I think his drawing upon the examples of four Americans, Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King Jr., as well as Dorothy Day and Thomas Merton, it was a perfect sort of way of capturing what I think is so distinctive about this individual. He was able to draw from the best of the American experience and tradition, while at the same time finding moral leaders who were capable of serving as exemplars for the best in ourselves. Yeah. Many have asked me over recent weeks, is he coming? Will he come? Of course he has to come. We began conversations with Cardinal Worrell and the Archdiocese nearly a year ago, once we knew that it was likely that he was going to be coming here. And most importantly, we wanted to ensure that we could be of support in any way possible to the Archdiocese for this extraordinary visit. It also became pretty clear very early on that the logistics of this trip were going to make it very, very difficult for him to make his way onto this campus. And so I'm not either surprised or I would say, like all, it would have been extraordinary if he could have come to visit here, but I understand why it didn't happen. And I'm so pleased, though, that so many members of our community were able to have a chance to be a part of this visit. Yeah. Thank you. That's a nice question. I haven't been asked about that over the years. I grew up in a very solid family, deeply committed to the Catholic faith, but it was something we kind of wore kind of easily, wore lightly. It was not, we said grace before meals. We went as a family to church on Sunday. I have an uncle, my mom's brother, who's a Jesuit, who's taught at Jesuit universities his whole career. When I came to Georgetown, though, I think I came, like many at 18, because this is a great university and it felt like the right place. It was only over time, as an undergraduate and then as my time here continued, that I realized one of the reasons why it felt so right to me was because of the profound respect it had for the faith of each member of our community. We just celebrated the life of Rabbi White on Sunday, and Rabbi White and I were friends for nearly 40 years. He served this community well, long before I ever got here. And it was beautiful to see the community come together in that moment. I had the privilege just a week earlier to celebrate Rosh Hashanah with our Jewish community in our celebration of the High Holy Days. I think in Rabbi White's, in the testimonies offered at Rabbi White's memorial, two of the most beautiful were offered by our imam and by a Catholic priest. And I think the profound respect this university community has always shown to me personally, but also I think to the full diversity of our community, of the importance of faith as a dimension of our lives, was something that I began to appreciate very early on. Then a really interesting thing happened while I was here. Beginning in the early to mid 1980s, the resources of the tradition that have animated Georgetown, the Jesuit tradition, the resources began to be available in ways that just weren't accessible to earlier generations. And it was because of the work of some extraordinary individuals, some of whom are here. They've been doing this for many, many years, and they're in their 80s. Yeah. But John O'Malley wrote some of the most important work about the early Jesuits. Howard Gray and Brian McDermott have done extraordinary work in making the spirituality of St. Ignatius available. And what I realized rather early on is that we are part of a living, breathing, dynamic tradition. And we're helping to interpret and develop and extend and explain and make it ever more alive in this moment. And for us, it's really finding that combination. We strive to be one of the great universities of the world, and we strive to be authentically Catholic and Jesuit, and to do so in a way that acknowledges the tensions that exist between trying to get that balance, and a profound respect for engaging those tensions and critiquing ourselves and being able to respond to those tensions. The motto of the university, Utraque Unum, both into one, originally comes from Paul's letter to the Ephesians. We've sort of taken a lot of liberty in explaining what both into one really means. Well, I think one of the ways in which it's had meaning in our lifetime is really finding this balance between being a university and being a place that is authentically Catholic and Jesuit, and finding the way to integrate those in a way that enables us to be most true to who we are. I would say two things. First, that we have found incredible validation for the kinds of approaches we've taken to some of these issues, and an incredible challenge to take whatever we've done and make it even that much stronger. Let me give you a couple of examples. So the encyclical that came out in June, Laudato Si, the most anticipated encyclical in our lifetime, and he didn't fail to in any way to fail to meet anyone's expectations. For Georgetown, we made a decision in 2005 to cut our carbon footprint by 50% by 2020, and we're at 72% today. I mean, we've exceeded all of our expectations until we read the encyclical. And when we read the encyclical, we realized, well, one of the terms of engagement when we launched this in 2005 was you were permitted to use renewable energy credits as part of the tools that would enable you to accomplish your goal. Well, reading the Pope's encyclical, renewable energy credits, that's not going to work. Yeah. So that while it may have been perfectly appropriate when we started, it's not perfectly appropriate in 2015. So we're no longer at 72%, we're below 50 now. So we're going to have to double down on our efforts and move the needle ever further. Well, one of the things we did, I had the privilege to engage incredible architect and visionary named William McDonough, who wrote a book in 2002 called Cradle to Cradle. Well, I engaged Bill. We met in June. The encyclical came out a couple of weeks later, and I was glad I had already reached out to Bill because it was clear we were going to need to take this further. Yeah. Pope, in his letter, talks about the circular economy. Cradle to Cradle was an early effort to try to show how you might be able to create more circularity in the way in which you organize your lives together in a community, where the universities of Washington committed to new levels of sustainability. Validation and a real challenge. And so what we hope we can do through a number of initiatives, from the Georgetown Environment Initiative to our work on sustainability to the circular economy, all of these are an effort on our part to try to respond to this challenge. And then very early on, we made a commitment that our need-based financial aid program, where we meet full need, would be available to undocumented students. And we've been doing that for many, many years. And we remain committed to providing the best possible support for all of our students, and have been deeply committed to supporting immigration reform in many different contexts. So we think in many ways we are in alignment with the values of the Holy Father, and we feel deeply challenged to ensure that we are authentic to those values. Well, I would begin with the priorities, which is to ensure that this is the safest possible place for all of our students, and that no one be blocked, be limited in any way by a fear that this wasn't a place that provided the strongest possible context for them to live the richest possible life here. So the degree to which concerns about sexual assault are constraining, blocking, limiting any of our members from being able to realize the full experience here, that is always our first priority. I've had an opportunity to work on these questions for nearly a quarter century, because at one point in my years here at Georgetown, I was the chief student affairs officer. I was the dean of students from 85 to 92, and in that context we confronted these dynamics in a very, very direct way. We established a framework that included full-time personnel and a sexual assault working group, and we've had, I think, a deep history and a deep engagement in trying to ensure the safest possible environment for our community. At the same time, we recognize that in any context like this, you have to just stay at it, keep working, try to find the next way in which we can deepen and engage with our students where they are, so that we can be supportive in the most appropriate ways. We can provide the infrastructure, we can provide leadership, whatever it's possible for us to do and whatever it's possible to provide, we want to ensure we're doing it. We recognize that we share all these responsibilities because all of our students have to live out their own lives, and we want to ensure that they understand both what we expect and what we believe are the appropriate standards for behavior here, and that we're prepared to provide a framework to support and sustain that. And if there are things that only a university can do, we want to make sure we're doing those. Yeah. So, I guess it's about 3 years now we've had the online program that is part of orienting everybody to our community. 2 years now we've been a leader in modeling a best practice regarding bystander training and awareness. We just entered in, or we're about to enter into, a new agreement with our students. Great leadership from Georgetown University Student Association and by our colleagues in the provost and the vice president for Student Affairs Office. I've reviewed the new agreement. I think it's a terrific piece of work, and I'm hopeful that will also help make a contribution. We added the online app last year, which I think was received well by folks. We've developed a new training program for all of those who are involved in hearings. We critique and we receive critique following some of the hearings that we've been a part of, and we've also been participating in some of the national and local discussion. I was part of a meeting here in Washington in August, and our General Counsel Lisa Brown was part of a national discussion that took place in early July. So we are very aware of how important this issue is right now, what an appropriate kind of understanding of responsibility entails, and we're trying to ensure we're doing everything in our power to respond to those expectations. We're going to continue. So we have another, we're going to work all year to try to achieve even more, but we did accomplish the target goal of 1.5 billion. And you're quite right that the rankings in U.S. News put a disproportionate amount of attention on endowment. And the history for Georgetown is we were actually owned by a religious community, the Jesuits of Georgetown, until 1969. And we didn't really begin fundraising like traditional universities until the early 1980s. We've done 4 campaigns in our modern history. We did one in 1981 to 86. It was a $115 million campaign. And we raised 168 toward that goal. And then we did the bicentennial campaign where we raised another 100 in the last part of the 1980s. We didn't do another campaign then again until 1995 to 2003. We raised $1 billion in that campaign. And then in this campaign, we're currently at 1.5. We've raised roughly $2 billion since I took on this role. And I guess what I would say is my experience has been incredibly broad and deep generosity in our community. I think relative to our peers, we're doing pretty well in terms of the growth rate, in terms of our fundraising. To raise $2 billion in this last, since the early part of the last decade, that's a pretty good tribute to this community. And it is completely predicated on generosity of all of our members. We set a couple of goals for this campaign. We wanted to raise $1.5 billion. We wanted to raise $500 million for financial aid. We wanted to get to we wanted to go from 26.5% to 35% in terms of alumni participation. We're on track. We've met the first goal. We're at 34.5% on the third goal, and we're at about $350 million on the second goal. But important to know that $350 million we've raised roughly in the last 5 or 6 years is more than we've raised for scholarship in the previous 220 years. So this is a deeply committed community, and for me it's a privilege to be able to engage with it in this way every day, because these are folks who believe in us, they believe in our values, they believe in our mission, they believe in our history, and most importantly, they believe in our future. There are always 3 things you're raising money for. Financial aid, faculty, and buildings, infrastructure. In our case, we organized the campaign around 4 priorities. Financial aid, support for the faculty, some infrastructure-related issues, and what we call transformative opportunities. If you think about the first one, scholarship support, I would say that what that enables us to do is to ensure that the next generation of the best students will always be able to consider Georgetown as a realistic opportunity. Our way of ensuring the future of the institution and the quality of the student body that we have is to ensure affordability, and the way we ensure affordability is through 2 policies. We're need-blind in admissions, and we meet full need of all of our students. What does that mean? Need-blind, we don't believe that your ability to pay is a relevant factor in our decision to admit you. When we construct a class, when Charlie Deacon and our committees on admissions construct a class. We think they should look at a number of things about you in determining admission. We don't think one of them is your ability to pay. And then once you're admitted, we ask that, number one, your parents are able to pay the maximum that they're capable of. Number two, that we would ask that you borrow. And we cap our borrowing at $17,000 total over 4 years. Third, we ask that you work in the college work-study program 10 to 12 hours a week. And we ask that you work a summer job. And we add those three together, and we subtract that from the cost of education, which this year is $62,000, and whatever the difference is, we cover it. Well, that's a little over $100 million that we'll spend this year, which is about 20% of our overall operating budget for the main campus. And that's a big, big commitment. The way we ensure the future through fundraising and through endowment growth is by ensuring that we're able to sustain this program. And we know we need more philanthropy and more endowment to be a part of the puzzle. Number two, the priorities that we set in the campaign. So when we say faculty, it's a big abstraction. Usually it's programs the faculty are interested in, ensuring are part of the academic agenda, the academic cost. So if cost weren't an object, we'd be doing all sorts of other things around here, but we want to try to always ensure affordability. So finding that right balance, and what Designing the Futures is doing is looking both at exciting new adventures for us in learning and scholarship, but also attentive to, and how might we be able to constrain the growth in cost. We've done 1.1 billion over the last roughly 14 years or so here on the main campus, and we needed to. I mean, we had been constrained by some of the challenges with our community, with the larger neighborhood community, in terms of being able to move forward with some of the growth and development that we needed to. And when we launched the Southwest Quadrangle project, that was the prerequisite for us to be able to do the things we really needed to do, which was a new home for business, a new home for performing arts, a new home for science. We were able to ultimately get all that done. And back to your point on philanthropy, I think we probably added about 400 million to what enabled us to do the billion plus was a great generosity of our community, because we were able to raise a lot of philanthropy to support that. The really annoying stuff, I think, may be done by Thanksgiving or so. I mean,
I sleep through it.
the library walk, the quadrangle, the new bus turnaround facility down near McDonough Gym. These have been, I think, the most annoying of the projects, and I think we're going to have those finished this fall. That leaves the two big projects, which is the Thompson Center and the new residence hall next to Rice. And I think those are on track to be finished by early summer of next year. So we may get a window there where there won't be a tower crane on this campus for about the first time in 15 or 16 years. And,
it's exciting.
I think we'll miss the tower crane, but we probably won't miss the disruption. So our goal is always to just stay at the table and to keep working until we get an alignment between what we need, and we is a complicated we. Our faculty have interests, our students have interests, our alumni have interests, and as an administration, we seek to create the best possible balance for our own perspective. And then we bring it out into the public, and we have multiple neighborhoods. We have Burleith, Georgetown, and Palisades. We have the Cloisters neighborhood, and increasingly there are others. The concentric circles moving away. There's a lot of interest, and so when we established the Georgetown Community Partnership, that gave us the most stable and consistent way of providing continuity over time in this conversation. We don't have a lot more that we can do on this campus. We know our limits. There aren't that many more places that we can build. So our our ambition for this campus is not, I think, unreasonable. And I think we're realistic about what more can be done here. I think we're going to have the ability to get alignment with our students, our faculty, and our alumni in terms of this campus. I don't think people want to see a whole lot more construction on here. I mean, we know we can do some work to expand Laixin. That would be, I think, well received by many.
Yeah.
I think there's probably an ability, the campus plan that you may have seen shows an ability to do a bit on the Harbin Esplanade, and then,
Yeah, we saw that.
and then a bit next to
Regents.
Regents Hall. And then there's the long-range dream of ultimately perhaps flipping the Yates Fieldhouse and Shaw Field, where Shaw Field could go on Yates and Yates could go on Shaw Field. That's probably the longest range. And then the most immediate issue is really around academic medicine, which is MedStar Health is ready to build a new hospital. And we're ready to support them in building a new hospital. And the site for that is the parking lot between Darnell and the existing hospital.
Oh, okay.
And that would be worth taking a look at. It's a really exciting project. We're very supportive of MedStar's interest in getting that done. We think that will help our medical students and our residents really be able to move forward in this new way. That one is ambitious because that is a big project, and we all need to get everybody in alignment regarding that project.
Yeah.
And so that one, but I'm pretty confident we're going to be able to get alignment between all of the parties, because I think our expectations are reasonable and modest, and I think we just need to make sure that everybody is a part of it.
So it
We
would
bring
go.
everybody together.
It would go in the parking lot, but what would happen to the previous space where the hospital was?
Well, they would then go back and fix.
Oh, so it would
This
just
would
get
be an
bigger.
expansion.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, this would be a new expansion,
Okay, that's
modernizing their surgery rooms and their intensive care rooms, modernizing access. We would move the heliport to the roof.
That's
The
good.
soccer team would be very pleased about that. Soccer teams would be very pleased about that. And then they would have then the ability to go back and retro, do a renovation of the existing
Got it.
facility.
Yeah.
Truly, it's unintentional.
Yeah.
No one, at the same time, there's no excuse for not being able to accommodate. And we know what our responsibilities are to the respect for every member of our community. And we want to ensure we are fully attentive to them.